Hello, everyone. It's Kate Stillman with the Yoga Healer podcast, and I am here with Sara Campbell of discoveryourdepths.com. And Sara came into my world of yoga health coaching as a member, and I knew like a tiny bit about her when she came in as a member, and then you've come to a bunch of my online workshops, and I've gotten to know you more through that, and in the process discovered that you have a few world records under your breath. And that's really, it's really fascinating. So Sara's world records are in the sport of deep breath hold diving, becoming the deepest woman in the world. And I just read that and I was like, that is so. And then you shared a video with a few of us after you really connected in the last Master Review workshop with our European yoga health coaching community, which is really awesome to see that. And then you shared this video of your dive. And I didn't first of all know this sport existed. So excuse my ignorance. And then I was reading a bit about your story about how you got into it. You weren't like, I'm going to go be the best, deepest woman in the world. See, you were helping a friend who was pestering you to be her safety buddy. And I wouldn't even know what a safety buddy is except for that video, which we'll put the video in the show notes of like what it actually looks like to do a deep dive. And so there's a depth counter and then there's a time counter. And you're watching these two things and we're watching you with this really cool mermaid flipper go down, 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 down. And you're thinking like, as I'm watching it, I'm noticing how much I'm breathing, right? Yeah. I'm like, I inhaled again. I exhaled again. I inhaled again. And I know a little bit about breath holding just from surfing. And my husband and I do practice it a bit because it does suck to get held under a wave and, inhale water, not good instead of air and all that. So I have some context for it, but watching like the time going on and how long it is and just wondering like, how do you train? And what is the motivator to train? And what do you encounter to overcome your body's desire to inhale? Because it's so long. Like to have the world record in that it is such a long period of time to do that. So I would love for you just to talk about your journey.
I mean, firstly, I think, I think the first thing I need to talk about is adaptation and the whole physiology, because the fascinating thing about free diving is that the body remembers. And even if you've never free dived, you have a physiological blueprint from our ancestors who lived in the ocean. I mean, I'm not talking like a few thousand years ago. I'm talking about when we were sea creatures. And so we have this incredible physiological memory, which means that when we are immersed in water, and the thing is we have these little nerve endings here and here.
So she's pointing to her sinuses because people not watching. So she's pointing to the sinuses below the eyes and above the eyes.
Yeah, your cheeks and just above your eyebrows. And so when you put your face in a bowl of water, those nerve endings are reading submersion. And so they're sending a message to the brain, which says, don't breathe, because the airways are submerged. So you automatically have this communication loop that happens with the body. And then as you hold your breath longer, and in regarding deep free diving, as you go deeper, your body is also reading the pressure, the hydrostatic pressure that is on the body and the compression that is therefore happening in the lungs. It goes through this amazing sequence of physiological changes. So it starts to prioritize because basically the body wants to survive. So the first thing is your heart rate drops so that you're burning the oxygen less quickly. This is why relaxation is the first thing that we teach. The second thing is that all of your peripheral blood vessels begin to constrict so that your blood flow is centered within the core. And that has two functions. One is to make sure that the oxygen is delivered to the vital organs. The body recognizes arms and legs are not vital, yet they're useful, but they're not vital. And the second function is that it provides a cushion against the increase of the pressure of the water outside the body. So the pressure on the inside also increases. And then, I mean, as you get deeper and deeper, there's this incredible function called the blood shift, where the blood vessels inside the lung tissues, which surround the alveoli, which is where the gaseous exchange happens, those blood vessels actually expand. So they're kind of like airbags around the airbags, if you like, so that the alveoli just get smaller and smaller and smaller and don't implode from the pressure of the water outside. Because, I mean, my 104-meter dive, my air spaces were 1/11th of the size that they are on the surface. So that's a massive physiological change. And of course, that all has to happen within the semi-rigid structure of the rib cage and the diaphragm. Everything is being sucked inwards and upwards. And but the body knows this. This is what we have in common with whales and dolphins and seals. They also have this same physiological response. So it needs to be trained. It obviously needs to be trained to adapt, but it's there. So if you start with breath hold and then you start with gradual depth increase, your body's just going, yeah, been here before, I remember. And it's cool. And it's really, it's such a sensation of when you have that dive, when you relax and you can really allow that process to occur, it's a really beautiful experience of like coming home. I've been here before. It's amazing.
And is it really the inner experience that brought you deeper? Like that brought you on a path towards depth? I mean, it's like in yoga, right? Like that, it just reminds me of meditation so much of you start to have experiences that you don't otherwise, like you just don't otherwise have. And then that creates more desire to see what else there is.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, it was curiosity. And as I started setting national records and, maybe some media got a little bit interested, the question is, why do you do this? What drives you? And for me, it was just like, I didn't know I could do stuff like this, I never imagined I would be somebody who would have a national record in anything, and let alone a world record or 4. So it was like this curiosity of, oh my God, what I'm just seeing myself in a whole different perspective. And, for me now, what I teach is like, we all have so much hidden potential within us that we just don't even get curious about and explore, let alone maximize and take to its ultimate expression. So for me, it just made me happy. Like my very first motivator was, this makes me happy. And so if that's all it takes to be happy, I'm just going to dive 2-3 times a week. And that was it.
Yeah. And your friend that got you into it, what was that like? Like, what was because I mean, it's like just you were saying, people have all this potential in them and someone can be knocking at our door, like literally being like, hey, come do this. And then we might not. And then we finally might. And then this whole world unfolds and opens and brings us more into, we could say, a path of dharma or a path of purpose, like where our life takes on a new purpose that's not someone else's purpose, but it's much more, it's our version of our life. And so instead of somebody else's version of our life. So unpack that part of the story a little bit, because I think it's fascinating for people that might not feel like they're living their potential or their purpose, or that they might not have like what might be knocking on their door and they might not know what it is, just like your friend's persistent pestering.
I mean, my reaction to her was, I'm not interested. It just sounds like a crazy thing to do. And it feels like it's something.
Where were you living at the time? Were you in London at the time?
No. I was already in Egypt. So she was a yoga student. So we were doing meditation and pranayama together. So she could see it's like, she does this spiritual stuff and breath hold, and she loves swimming. We used to go swim together a lot. So she was like, you'd be perfect. Just do safety for me.
Because she knew you could hold your breath. I mean, I think that's the key, right? She's like, oh, you know how to, like, you get breath. And so that was like the gateway.
Yeah. There was
intersection. Okay, cool.
yeah, it was an obvious connection there, but I just wasn't interested. And it took her a year, water dripping on a stone. And in the end, I did the course and I was like, oh God, I'm just going to do it. I'm going to do safety for you to 20 meters. That's it. I'm not interested. But then that's it. I got in the water and it opened my mind and I was like, oh my God, what is this? There was this stillness, this peace. It was like, for me, it was my yoga practice in another, and like you say, it reminds you of meditation. It is meditation. It's meditation in the water. It's a deep meditation. And the thing that is really powerful about it is that, you know, when you're sitting in meditation, you can be present, you can be there, but there can also be huge chunks of time when you're not there.
Right.
When you're doing the shopping or when you're doing a
the stakes are low. The stakes are really low. The stakes couldn't be lower.
And you're still on your mat, and you know you can go through to your 30 minutes, and the time goes. You go, oh yay! I did 30 minutes of meditation. If you're in the water and you disappear off for a moment, boom, that's it. The dive's over. It's like the ocean is saying, you weren't present. Get out. And so you have this incredible honesty. For a lot of people, it's really confronting because like they have to look inwards. They have to see what is going on inside. Yeah. But in terms of a meditation practice, it's like it's meditation on speed. It's like there's no denial, there's no shortcuts, there's no pretending. It's like either you're doing it or you're not.
It's so, I mean, what comes to mind for me with that is because I do a lot of sports related to water, right? I SUP surf, I SUP whitewater, and I ski. And a lot of people don't realize that like skiing, you're on frozen water. So it has the same feeling in water. If you're not present in water, it doesn't work. Like you will meet earth or nothing will happen. Like one of two things, like surfing, you won't catch a wave or you won't experience flow in the process. And so you'll just, wipe out or would get frustrated and just like the whole thing's not elegant. And the same thing with skiing, like there's everything has to work together for flow to occur. And it's very clear when it's happening and when it's not happening. Like there's not much gray area. It's like yes or no. And to get to yes, there's no part of the self that's not, I mean, and I'm not just talking about like getting down the hill or surfing a wave. It's like when you're in synchronicity with the element.
Totally. Yeah. For me, it's this honesty, which comes, for me, it's so much about love. It's like, it's nature. We're part of nature, and it's kind of saying, I want you to be here. I want you to recognize that you are me. It's like, but if you're acting out with that human bullshit that, you bring in your daily life, I'm sorry, I'm just going to hold the mirror up and show you.
Right.
So for me, it's like, it's the most powerful way to see, am I in spirit? Am I in flow or am I in control? And it's uncompromising, which is great.
So can someone practice? I'm just trying to make this like, how could someone practice this? So if someone has a bathtub, like, I mean, where's the like the home version of someone? Because there's something, what we're identifying here is there's something that happens with the element. And then I brought a bunch of like elitism sports into the mix, right? Which like not many people have access to. So if someone lives near water, that's much easier. Like use the water, like be in water and hold your breath and see what happens with the mind.
I have to say with this is like, don't do it on your own, even in the bath, because I hate for somebody to have an accident. Like, please have somebody watch you. But yeah, sure. If you're super curious and you're like, oh my God, yeah, this seems like the thing that I've been wanting to do all my life. And I find myself holding the breath in the bath, but I'm not sure what I can do with it. Yeah.
What do they do?
Well, be as relaxed as possible, firstly, face down. And it's really...
And it's the face down because that's what wakes up the parasympathetic nervous system.
Yes. So the mammalian dive response, these nerves in the face, which kick off this physiological chain of events.
Yeah.
So
it's like dead man's float then, right? Like in terms of like swimming lessons, like longer dead man's float. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And that's so cool. I mean, that's such a cool, from the from some of the training I've had in yoga and pranayama and whatnot, like the back body is the universal and the front body is the individual. And so you bow to the backside, and then the physiological embodiment of that, like, of the neurochemistry is that like the back lower lungs, like right above the kidneys, get really inflated. And so you're not having an adrenaline response. It's like the opposite, where you're really relaxed. And so you don't need oxygen, right? Like there's this like, oh, there's the void. I can go into there instead of into this inhale, exhale.
Yeah. I mean, I'm interested to hear you talk about that, because that's a connection that I haven't heard about, with the kidneys, but definitely, I mean, there's, the adrenal response it's kind of switched off when you really get diving. It's like it's switched off. And interestingly, when I was doing my really deep dives, I'd dive maybe midday or early afternoon. I'd have some food, I'd go home, I'd rest, and like 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the night, boom, and I had this weird delayed adrenal response every time I would do a deep dive. And there was just no way I could go back to sleep.
Yeah.
So it was like it had been shut off very, very effectively, but somehow there still needed to be, I think it's almost like the dog shaking, after a stress. It's like it still needed to have that expression.
Well, it's interesting too to think about it, because then you were probably super awake, right?
Oh,
like
yeah.
Very, very, very high level perception and focus.
It's like, everything you don't want at 2 o'clock in the morning. It was
right. Right. Well, it's interesting though to hear, like I was talking with Wa a couple years ago. She's a musician, and obviously musicians who are on the yogic path and become kirtan musicians, they are also in the realm of breath work, right? I mean, that's the thing, right? Is how long they can exhale and make sound. It's a practice and it's a thing. And she is a serious yogini, and found that she would use that time, that like same thing, 2 a.m., 3 a.m., and just be so awake to the divine. And so she just was like, oh, we can use that like massive awakeness that can happen then in those vata, because it's the vata, pitta going into vata time, where you're just like subtle, the veils are lifted, ether's expanding, and have that as a complete experience. And then, you obviously are sacrificing some waking state normalcy, right? Where like tread carefully with that, because that's where like accidents happen and whatnot, because we're just like, then the real world becomes more challenging to navigate. In Living Ayurveda, it's super practical, it's super down to earth, and we wanted to make a difference in your life, honestly, the moment you start. Hi, it's Kate Stolman, and I'm going to tell you about how the Living Ayurveda course works and why it works the way it does work. A part of my natural personality is that I'm a futurist. I'm an innovator. I can't help it. It's just the way that my awareness works and has always worked. So I'm always looking at how do we make Ayurveda practical to solve for our biggest problems, at home, in nourishing ourselves and getting deep rest and passing on the habits to those who our lives affect. If we understand our habits are truly not our own, we say, hey, whose habits affect me and whose habits am I affecting? And can we align those habits with the kind of radiant longevity that we want to experience, right? Year by year, decade by decade by decade by decade in our road ahead. The other core part of my philosophy is around collective leadership, and I take those two words very seriously. I see how there's a whole next level of open-minded integration, where we look at the questions that you're bringing, the conversations you're wanting to have, and we build that into our leadership model, help lead and guide our community in the direction of addressing the deepest, most potent issues that'll help us get the greatest traction in growth and transformational evolution. So that's a lot of, my philosophy on Living Ayurveda. I look at our planet, I look at the stresses to our ecosystems, the stresses to our human population, our human culture, and that's what we're solving for. So that's how the whole course is geared. I take my community very seriously, become part of my heart, you want to become part of my people, and that's how the course works. I mean, that's why it works too, is it's even though we're all coming in from all over the world, we have an experience of deep connection, deep community, and evolution together. All right, I hope that clarifies some of your questions around the Living Ayurveda course. Okay, so you start, how did the first world record happen? Was that just, were you just So you had a national record.
Yeah, I had a whole load of national records because I'd kind of progressed from, being a beginner. I mean, I was,
and that was as like an English woman or what? Or that was
British national records. So I kind of, I was lucky when I was diving is that the national records were relatively accessible. So I kind of did those quite easy, and then I carried on and carried on and carried on. And I still wasn't really in the realm of the world records. I think I was like almost 20 meters away.
And what is that like percentage wise?
Oh, so at the time I was diving into the mid 70s meters, and the world record at the time was like 88.
So it was it was far enough away to be like, it's
far enough away, and I'm really conservative with my diving, and it's really important that people stay conservative, because this adaptation that has to happen, like every meter.
There's no rush.
There's more pressure on your chest. There's more pressure on your lungs. Like, who wants to rupture their lungs just for the sake of a number?
Right.
And that's what people are doing.
Really? So you see it. So the people you're hanging out with then it's not.
Yeah. I mean, I'm much less
happen.
in that scene now, because I just don't like it. People coming up and they're coughing blood. It's like, oh, great. Yeah. Well done. Was it worth it?
Right.
So yeah, the conservative progression is really important. So yeah, for me, there was a competition 2 weeks away, and I was like, well, no, it's not going to happen this time, because I'm not going to make it. And I made a mistake in my training. Like, when you do a dive, so that video that you watch, like the rope is going down and it's set to the exact depth that you want to dive, so that you have your cutoff point, and you're not having to go, am I there yet? Am I there yet? Am I there yet? Where am I? Am I nearly there? Because that's mental energy, which is going to burn oxygen and create contraction in your body.
Wow. That is so cool.
So on this dive, I think it was meant to be 72. I put my rope down and did the dive. So at some point I was like, oh, it feels maybe a bit long on the way down, a bit long on the way up, but I was okay. My safety diver was like, where were you? I nearly blacked out. Like, she was in much more trouble than I was, because I was just relaxed. I was like, it's a 72-meter dive. I know I can do this. It's okay. And, after a moment or so, I looked at my dive computer. I was like, oh, it was 82. Oh, okay.
When did you realize that?
After the dive.
So you were up, you're inhaling.
I was in a space of, I'm doing 72 meters. So I was completely relaxed, like no contraction, no stress at all. And it was only afterwards. And then I was like, maybe I could have a go at a world record. So then I had this crazy sort of 2 weeks of trying to get my head around all of that. It was like the mental stuff was way harder than the physical stuff. Way harder. Yeah.
Yeah. They say that, right? Like, the mind is the weakest muscle in the body.
Yeah. Yeah. And actually I have had people kind of throw that accident back at me. Like, they have also then gone, oh, I'm going to make a 10-meter jump because that's what Sara did. And then they end up with an injury. And I'm like, I didn't do it on purpose. My mind was in a space of 72 meters. Your mind was in a space of knowing that you're making a massive jump.
Right.
And your mind knows that there's a risk.
And forcing it. I mean, that's really the force versus the surrender.
Yeah, totally.
So what is that edge? I mean, it's fascinating, right? Where we want to do, there has to be the propulsion. There has to be a bigger goal, or we won't often do much, right? So like, there's a reason there's a record, for instance. And then to get to the record, you can't force it. You have to, there's this dance between aligned action and surrender, right? And so anyone listening, like, any goal you have, it's like, it's universally applicable, right? Like, you have to take aligned action to get there, and you have to surrender the will to make it like the push.
Yeah. It's such a paradox, and it's fascinating, because it's really like, for me to do any of those world records, it was just, I had to train. So, leading up to it, I had to train and make sure that I was doing the right preparation and get myself physically and mentally and spiritually ready to think, yeah, this feels like it's going to be possible on this day, but on the day, I'm just doing a dive.
Yeah.
Like, and it's so difficult to know, because, you've got all of the official setup. It's not just you and your buddy and your rope anymore. It's like safety divers and cameras and, you know, the whole world record
shebang.
setup.
Yeah.
But you just have to learn. And this is why it really is meditation. It's like you learn to zone your focus in on what is important in that moment, shut the rest of the world out. And I found actually that I was always very good in competition. I had this ability for my mind to find this place of real sharp focus, but deep stillness at the same time, which meant that I was always able to deliver. And but it's a fascinating dance of, like you say, this pull forwards. For me, the pull forwards, it was the curiosity, and it was I mean, the first time that I was training, it was, oh, this makes me happy. I'm just going to dive to be happy.
Yeah.
The second time that I went through a cycle of training was after my mum's death, and I'd had a lot of depression and breakdowns, and I'd gone into a really dark place after that. And I just, you know, I woke up one morning going, I need to find my joy. So for me then, that thing pulling me forwards was to reconnect with my joy. So it was not an egoic state. It was a reconnection with spirit. And so, and it's very hard then for young athletes or anyone who wants to put a number or a title onto that dive to separate the two. But essentially that's what needs to happen. It needs to be coming from a very pure place of, you know, like, what is the quality that you want to embody? For me, it was joy. And really making that your motivation. That's your desire, that's your pull forwards, and curiosity. So
what's it like when you're coming up the rope and you're almost to the surface and almost ready to inhale? Like, is it different every time? Is it the same every time?
Well, I mean, yeah, clearly it's different. Well, not every time, but like, okay, if it's going to be a good dive and I'm going to make it, then yeah, it's this feeling of it. It's very peaceful. I think, you know, you have your safety diver, and depending on, you know, on a very deep dive, they may be meeting you already at 40 meters. If it's a shallow dive, they'll be 30, 20 meters. So you have that moment when you're not alone anymore, because for the entire dive, all the way down and most of the way up, you're on your own. And so you have that moment where there's somebody with you. So
and what can they do for you? Like, what does the safety diver do if things are going wrong?
If I were to black out and lose consciousness underwater, their responsibility is to cover my airways. So they'll take me like this.
Yeah. So they're blocking the nostrils and grabbing the back of the occiput.
And swimming me up to the surface as quickly as possible.
Okay. So just getting you to air. Yeah.
Yeah.
They don't have air, but they...
No. And scuba divers are really useless because they can't come up to the surface quickly because they have their deco times. So it's all free. It has to be free dives supporting free divers.
So cool. Okay. So now your friend's there.
Yeah. So you have that moment of, cool, I'm nearly there. But it's also that last zone is the danger zone. So for two reasons. One is your oxygen supply is getting seriously low now if it's been a big dive. And two, so the pressure that is increasing as you go down increases the flow of oxygen feed to your brain. Of course, when you come up, that pressure is reducing, which means that your lungs are expanding again. So any gases, whether it's oxygen or CO2 that is kind of in your bloodstream, gets sucked back into the lungs so that they can expand. And so already your oxygen levels are low, and from 10 till 0, your lungs double in size. So you have this sudden, so if you're close to the end of your oxygen, that's it, lights out. So you know that your safety dive is there, but you
lights out, like you black out, like your body you lose consciousness.
You fall asleep. Yeah. So you know your safety dive is there, it's okay, but there's no guarantee that you're going to make it until you're on the surface and you've taken a few breaths. And we have a surface protocol, which basically is, you know, are you lucid? Are you really there?
Yeah. How much of you is here right now?
Yeah. And so, you know, you have to remove your facial equipment, so a nose clip or a mask, give the okay sign and say, I'm okay to the judges. This is in competition. Yeah, and of course that doesn't always happen. So sometimes I have fallen asleep on the surface or 1 meter before the surface. So yeah.
Wow.
So blackouts happen. They're part of the sport. This is why I say don't do it on your own at home in the bath. Because,
stuff can happen. Yeah.
Yeah. And the interesting thing is particularly with just these static breath holds, if you're in a pool or in the bath, you'll have the beginning will feel really blissful and relaxing. Then you'll get into what we call the fight phase. And this is when your body starts to try to initiate a breath and your diaphragm actually starts pumping. We call it contractions. And you might feel this in your solar plexus as this kind of rhythmic movement. And it's basically the diaphragm just going, breathe, breathe. I'd really like you to breathe now. And, advanced freedivers can ride this through quite a long time. Also, people with this really, strong mind can ride it through. It's not pleasant. And then there comes this moment where it's like, oh, it just got easy again. This is nice. Okay, maybe I can do it. No. When it gets easy, come up, because that's the sign you're about to black out.
Wow. So do those contractions happen the whole way down then?
I am a little bit unusual. There are a few people who don't get contractions, and I'm one of them, and I don't know exactly why.
Oh, fascinating.
Yeah. There's an unusual physiology in a few people, and I've spoken to other freedivers who also don't get them. But if I'm holding my breath, I get this extremely unpleasant burning sensation in my solar plexus, but I don't experience it on deep dives. Deep dives, just for me, they're just lovely.
Wow.
It's just this. Yeah. So maybe maybe there was a reason that I could do what I did. It was an interesting thing. I was taken into a lab after I did my first 3 world records. So, this is like, oh my God, there's this girl, she did 3 world records with only 9 months of training. This isn't normal.
Wow.
What's going on? And so they put me on a closed rebreather. So I'm exhaling, I again inhale. So of course the oxygen levels go down quite quickly, the CO2 levels go up. So when we're breathing now, we're at about 90 to 100% oxygen saturation. And as soon as your mind detects, 98, 97, the body will start to hyperventilate automatically in the majority of the population. And they have a minimum cutoff zone in terms of, what is the oxygen saturation that can cause or could cause some kind of brain damage. I think it was 62 or 65. And I was sitting there quite happily, a little bit dizzy, but I was like, no, I'm okay. I can keep going. They're like, oh, well, we have to switch the machine off. We're not allowed to go any further.
We're not allowed to give you brain damage in this experience.
Yeah. So I must have some slight anomaly in my gaseous metabolism.
Wow. So you were a yoga teacher, and then you go into free diving, you snag a bunch of world records, and now you have discoveryourdepth.com, and you're guiding people into their own depth, into their own journey of awakening. And so you talk a little bit about, like, in the work you've done with Discover Your Depth, what are some common hurdles and common themes that you just see as patterns with the people that you're working with?
I mean, it always comes down to belief systems, always. So, I mean, where we start with our basic training is we have 4 days, and the first day we're looking at the body. So it's just really to give people a new perspective on the body, like the body's intelligence, the body's wisdom, and that's pretty mind expanding for a lot of people. They just haven't looked at themselves in this way and really considered what a miracle that they are every single moment. Then we look at the mind, and that's really, for a lot of people, they have just been in the story and in the drama, and they've never had that ability to detach and to become the observer and to really see how powerfully it drives them, often in a direction which they had no intention of going. And spirit is our 3rd day. And, many people kind of just that's sort of their day when they wake up. That's the day when I invite them to look for that quality that they want to embody. So for me, it was happiness and then joy. And it's an amazing moment when they dive down, and the dive is often deeper than they've ever gone before. It is way easier. And they come back. Literally, they have connected with their spirit. They have this moment of ecstasy. And it's either expressed in ridiculous laughter or a lot of tears, but it's just this pure emotion.
There's some like cathartic release from the.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's just beautiful. So, but I mean, I think underlying all of that is belief systems and mindset, is that people don't allow themselves, for whatever reason. You know, we all come from different family backgrounds, different cultures, different societies, but we are all programmed with stuff which is not true. And for me, the ocean is truth. Nature is truth. And the beauty of the ocean is, and free diving is, like, if we want to immerse, we are really looking at oneness. Yeah, we're not just going for a walk in the forest and then coming back home. Like, it is proper immersion. And so that frequency has to match. Like, we cannot go deep in the ocean and be in contraction and be in stress and be forcing. It doesn't work. I mean, it physically doesn't work. Either you will injure yourself, or just you're unable to equalize your ears. And so you can't keep going down. So it's like the ocean is there saying, this is, you know, I'm your mirror. And so that, you know, when I'm observing people in the water and I see how they're moving, and it's like I can read all of their belief systems.
Yeah.
I can see the people who are, you know, low in self-esteem, the people who are in control, the people who are forcing and, you know, really in their ego and you know, looking for the affirmation of the performance to be okay. So, you know, there's so many different, there's so many different variations of us not being enough, but ultimately that's probably what it comes down to.
Yeah. I'm just thinking so much about, like, in many ways, like surfing, because it's like you can tell exactly what's going on in the lineup, like in everybody's head. Like, you can, you know, there's something about water that's so exposing to what's going on. And it makes sense, right? It's like in the niyamas in yoga, the first niyama is saucha, which is it's cleanliness, and you don't get cleanliness without water. Like, you don't, right? And so water washes stuff out. It brings impurities out of the garment, right? And there's this sense of who we are and why we're here. And water can just wash away all the other sort of the cultural overlays. Or the stuff that's just no longer appropriate.
Yeah. And I think, you know, then that combined with the breath hold, you know, and the breath hold for me enables us to access our subconscious immediately. So it's like everything that's there that we don't want to look at, that we're not willing to see, comes to the surface. The water brings it to the surface to bring the light to it.
That, you know, like when I saw the mouthpiece that you wear going down and coming, or that you wear in the free dive, or whatever it is, it's in your mouth. There's something, right?
In the mouth. No, it's something on the nose.
It's in the nose.
Not in the, yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So so describe that, and describe how to train your body not to inhale in water. Like, how does that work?
I wouldn't say it's a training. I mean, I remember learning to scuba dive before I free dived. And I can remember the feeling of going under with the mask, with the regulator in my mouth, and having to actively tell myself to breathe.
Oh, because there's not a desire to inhale. Yeah.
Yeah. The body, you know, these nerves in the face are sending the message to the brain going, don't breathe.
Don't do it. Yeah.
So you won't breathe unless you black out and you are not being taken care of by somebody who knows what they're doing. Then at some point the inhale will come, and that's then drowning.
Okay. And
but
so
inhale.
So it's basically a nose plug that.
The nose clip is there because when you're diving down and the pressure is increasing, you know, when you're flying and you're coming into land, you need to equalize your ears.
Yeah. So
this is a constant thing when you're going down under the water, because now we're at 1 atmosphere of pressure at sea level. 10 meters, I'm at 2. So already in that first 10 meters, my lungs are halving in size.
Okay.
And then from 10 meters to 20, they reduce again at 20 to 30. And so every 10 meters, we have another atmosphere of pressure. And so all of the air spaces, the lungs, the sinuses, and the eustachian tubes in the ears. So if you don't equalize your ears, if you miss one, you're going to have your eardrums sucked in, and that's extremely painful. And that's the end of your dive. So the nose clip is just there so that I don't have to have my hand there. You know, if I'm doing a deep dive, I'm more hydrodynamic and I'm relaxed. And also, if I had a mask on, that's another airspace I have to equalize.
Oh, okay. So that's why that makes sense.
Yeah. No, it's for what's going on inside.
So any closing thoughts to the listeners, just in terms of how to discover their depth, you know, just being wherever they are, maybe water's not accessible.
I mean, I think breath work is always incredibly powerful. And one thing that I remember, it was before I even started freediving, but I can remember working with a specific pranayama from Kundalini tradition called Sudarshan Chakra Kriya, which has this long breath hold with these belly pumps. And it would bring up so much heat and panic inside of me. And I would really kind of be rushing to get through each cycle of breath to try and compress it and make it shorter. And one day I felt like a release, physical release inside of me. And literally from one moment to the next, the breath hold doubled, the panic was gone, the heat was gone. And so something released, and I don't know, because that happened, you know, maybe a year or two before my freediving career started. But I have a feeling that something released in that meditation, which was a precursor for what's to come. And I think that exhale breath hold is a really powerful practice, because it's frightening.
Well, and it's the void, right? It's that emptiness,
exactly.
That curiosity into emptiness. It's the death journey.
Yeah.
That's such great advice. You know, so much of what I find at Yoga Healer and Yoga Health Coaching, it's like there's free solutions. Like there's so much great stuff on YouTube. There's like, you know, and like we all are with our breath all the time. Like no one can take that from you. No one can give that to you. And it's part of our human technology. The yogis have been clued into that for thousands of years. Very many cultural traditions from around the world have been tuned into that. You know, it's like all deep ceremony usually involves some form of breath work to shift our experience of consciousness. And then it has all these life-giving properties. Yeah. Awesome, Sara. I could talk to you forever. So fun to have you as a course member. So I do get to hang out with you for the next couple of years and watch you discover your depths at the next level. And just so glad to have you as part of the community.
Yeah, thank you. I'm loving being a part of it. And I mean, I'm here in the Canary Islands right now because of you. So thank you.
Oh, my goodness. Anytime. Okay. Namaste.
Cool. Have a great day. Namaste, Kate. Thank you so much.